back on this end.
I'm Scott Connell, and I'm the worship pastor here at First Baptist Church, Jacksonville, Florida. And we have desired here at First Baptist to provide a theatrical production of the story of Jesus Christ, the Jacksonville Passion Play, an event that we have been hosting since 2006. Now, passion plays are something that churches have been doing for centuries. But here in First Baptist, our history, though a little bit shorter, is with the same intent, that attendees would have the opportunity to see the story of Jesus Christ in a very compelling way, a way through acting and singing and scenery and effects and lights that just makes the story come to life before your very eyes. This year's edition of the Jacksonville Passion Play is an all-new story. The story is called The Well. The Well was a gathering place centuries ago for people to come get water because it was a necessity for life. But it was more than that. It was an opportunity to catch up on what was going on in someone else's life. It was a meeting place. Sometimes it was an opportunity to meet someone at a designated location. I'll meet you at the well. Sometimes it was a place where town gossip was exchanged. But for one particular woman, a Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, it was a place that changed her life. She came to the well in her town at a time of day that she thought no one else would be there. But someone was there. Someone who intended to meet her, even though she didn't intend to meet him. For Jesus knew that this woman needed what he had to offer. And while she came to get water for the day, he offered her that day living water. Water that would give her life, and that more abundantly and eternally. And it is that story that inspired this bigger story of this Passion Play. Because of the gathering place of a well for women often to catch up on life, it became sort of a creative curiosity. What would it be like if some of the more prominent women in Scripture, women that Jesus met and changed their lives, gathered at a well and had a conversation about how Jesus changed their lives? So this particular story is that imaginary gathering of Mary, the mother of Jesus, that Samaritan woman from John 4. The woman with the issue of blood that Jesus healed after 12 years of suffering from sickness. And then Martha of Bethany, whose sister Mary had together a brother named Lazarus who died from a sickness that they thought Jesus would come heal, and he didn't do that, though he came and did so much more. What would it be like if those women got together and had a conversation? But then it's more than that, even those women. What would it be like if some modern day women took a trip to Jerusalem, a once in a lifetime trip, an opportunity to kind of catch up on life that had transpired in ways that they hadn't expected, much like those biblical women. Life that included maybe sickness or marital issues or financial troubles or just difficulty. What would it be like for those women to be on a trip to Jerusalem, having been friends for 20 years, but then to get stranded at a well, stranded at a place in Jerusalem where they knew a lot had taken place, but they weren't exactly sure what. And in the context of their catching up with one another's lives at the well, these other stories come alive. For the imagination can run wild when you're looking at a piece of history and you're thinking about what may have happened there. And what if what happened there was transforming? What if what may have happened there was Jesus encountering women and changing their lives? And what if Jesus did that in the 21st century? That's exactly what our story is about. And it's an all new telling, new music and new script that has really come alive even in the midst of our worship ministry. For even though the concept of the well had been in existence for some of us for a few years, the idea of making it come alive on a stage actually began in a theater in London. Just over a year ago, my wife and I were sitting in a theater in the West End, and we were watching the production of Wicked. And we had never seen it before and just wanted to see what this show was all about. And when we got to the end of Act 1, as we were sitting there right at the front of the theater, and we get to that famous last scene where Elphaba is singing Defying Gravity, and we go into intermission, the experience was so profound that we just looked at each other and thought, why can't the gospel be told in such a compelling way? If the world can take such a beautiful piece of art, like theatrical arts, if they can take the stage and acting and singing and produce a compelling story that isn't even true, what could we do with something that is true? More than that, what could we do with something that's so true that it would change the lives of anyone who would consider what Jesus did? So we brought this idea here to First Baptist, and we just began to think out loud, both in our family as we had dinner time conversations, and then with the creative team here at First Baptist, and began to imagine, what should this story look like? Who should it involve? How would we tell it in a way that transferred the experience from first century biblical women to 21st century modern day women? And that exchange of storyline from 2,000 years ago to today became just a very compelling thought and a fascinating way to tell a story. And then we thought, well, what if we did that in a way that not only was unique in its storytelling, but what if we began to show parallels between what happens in Scripture and what happens today? What if we showed that the very things that happened to the women at the well in the first century, especially when it involved Jesus, could happen today in the 21st century? And that became just one of the most inspiring parts of this story, because our desire was to show through these modern women that what Jesus did then is just as relevant today as it was then. That the way he changed their lives is the way he would change lives today. And the miracles that he did then are the same miracles that he's at work doing today. The concept of the well has been in development for years, but the idea of this Jacksonville Passion Play has been the work of a very long and busy year of production. Thousands of hours of script writing and scene development and song arranging and developing the stage and putting together the ideas of a story that I think you'll find is so unique that you will share my wife's and my enthusiasm for that day that we sat in that theater in London's West End and wondered, what could be if the greatest story ever told were told through one of the greatest mediums ever used, theatrical production. Veronica, your last line.
No one can help me.
Hold. When you're using a story that involves two chronologies, one from the first century and one from the 21st century, there are some complications, but there are also some opportunities. So one of the neatest things about this story is the demonstration of time travel, or taking the audience from a modern day setting back in time to a first century setting. And what you'll see in this particular story are some effects, both with music, which are stunning arrangements, but also through the use of a giant LED wall, an animated wall at a high resolution that will show animated transformations that take us from a scene as it may have looked in the first century to a scene to the 21st century and back again. The opportunity to imagine with our very eyes what it would be like to go from past to present. And in so doing, just take the audience with us as we make that journey and begin to develop the parallels between then and now. You'll also see some scenes that are just a part of every Passion Play, some of the profound demonstrations of Jesus' power, like his healing, his teaching, the way he interacts with the Pharisees, and of course, those very compelling images. I think images that it would be important for everyone to consider what it would have been for him to be punished to be beaten, for the crown of thorns to be pressed into his head, to be taken out to a cross and crucified, and then of course to be buried. You'll see in this story, in the well, that those moments, like the Gospels do, they slow down. Whereas other parts of the story are told quickly, that part of the story intentionally gets slower and more detailed as we look carefully at what Jesus has done to take upon himself the sin of the world and bear the punishment of that. And those moments when he's in the tomb, and we think about what it would have been like for those disciples and the other followers of Jesus to wait and wonder, will be compelling moments for the audience as well, as we think about what it seemed like that hope was gone and that this great Messiah may not have been who he said he was. But the most marvelous scene, as every Passion play should be, is that moment when we see the sun rise on that resurrection morning and the stone rolls away and the presence of those angelic visitors as Jesus comes out of the tomb, and we see his resurrected body, and we see that image of him coming out and life forevermore. And of course, even though it's just an actor and we know it's not really Jesus, it just is what it represents to us that inspires us. That this man who we have seen as an actor be punished and killed, buried in a tomb, when he comes out, we know that it's much more than an actor coming out. It's a reminder that Jesus is alive today and alive forevermore.
So we want to update the Passion play. We play the storytelling method, music styles, technology. All those things are being looked at. All those things have plans to be in a new direction. We have called this very affectionately #NotYourMother's Passion Play.
There's some things this year that are very unique for a Jacksonville Passion Play. One of those things is a giant LED wall, just a giant screen that's going to help us tell the story. Some of the neatest things about this story that are so different are the use of social media and texting and storytelling through that giant LED wall that tell the story and in some cases carry the story forward. You'll be fascinated as we tell the story in a very 21st century way, in a way that you live your lives with texting and post to social media and opportunities to communicate through one another through the internet. Another thing that will be very inspiring, I think, that's unique this year is the storylines are very deep. You're going to see Jesus, you're going to see what he went through, you're going to see people that interacted with him, but you're also going to see some layering of stories, some parallels of stories, some overlap of some themes that if you pay close attention, you're going to get way more out of this experience than you can imagine. And then finally, there is a surprise at the end, a surprise that I promise you no one will see coming. A part of the story that you will not predict, but when you see it, it makes the entire story all the more meaningful, and I can't wait for you to experience it.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
When we began developing this new story, The Well, I asked the question of people I knew, who is the best guy on the planet to write this type of story musically? Who would be the best guy that I could find that could orchestrate and develop the score in a way that would depict the variety of styles, that would encompass sort of a Broadway-esque kind of musical setting, but could also appreciate the great gift we have here in a church orchestra under the direction of Edson Dickinson and this wonderful choir. And I was told by several that you need to talk to Tyler Williams. Tyler Williams is the man who's done the vast majority of the arranging for us, and you will know right away when you hear his music that he is a gifted man with a special gift for the church and for this production.
So the cool thing about The Well is that you have kind of two stories in one. There's the modern women, and then there's these biblical women, and it all converges in this one place. And so sound-wise, how do we recreate that? So some of the songs are real fresh and have kind of fresh sounds and orchestrations. Some of them have a little bit more cinematic sounds or It feels like we're traveling to the Holy Land. It's really great to be able to work with First Jacksonville Choir and Orchestra. It's a great group, and it's a large group, and so being very specific in how we use that, and sometimes we scale it down, and it could be just piano or just strings, and then sometimes we expand it and it's the full orchestra. You have tender songs where really it's one person's story, this one person's encounter with Jesus, and it's very focused in on them. And then you have large group numbers focused on everybody. Depending on the story and where we are, the music really helps point the listener and the audience member to what we need to be focusing on. My favorite song for the Jacksonville Passion Play, I keep coming back to Living Waters.
Rise up in these living waters.
Kind of opens the show. It's got such a signature theme that is just so recognizable that you can take that theme, and it actually appears later on throughout the whole show. It'll make appearances in the orchestra or in the vocals, but it's got such a special theme, and it's just so memorable, and it's just high energy. This church is using this music not just for the sake of music, but for reaching this city and for all those who come to see these performances. In the hands of Scott Connell, we can't go wrong, and it's going to be just a great, great performance.
The most important thing for us here at First Baptist Church, the most important thing that we want you to get out of this Jacksonville Passion Play, out of the well, is the story of Jesus Christ, the gospel, the good news that what He did, that we portray here on this stage, is absolutely true. That He really came to earth. He really came and was born as a baby. He grew up to be a man. He taught as one with authority. He did many miracles, including healing the sick and raising the dead. And then He really did die on a cross. He died on that cross not because of any kind of crime that He had done or anything that He deserved punishment for. He was perfect and without any sin. He did that for us. He did that for those who had committed those sins. All of us. He took upon Himself the punishment of sin so that we could receive His gift, that we could receive the very gift of salvation and righteousness that He provides through His perfect life. He lived perfectly so that we could have His reward. He died a sinner's death. He died a sin punishment from the wrath of God so that our sins could be paid for. His coming out of the tomb, His resurrection is just proof that it worked. It's proof that He is alive forevermore, and that those who trust Him for salvation will also live forevermore. So of all the things you could get from us, this is the thing we want you to receive most. Salvation, life forevermore in Jesus Christ, that you would know eternity with Him and enjoy the pleasures and the joy of relationship with Him.